God is exposing the evil around you. Pay attention. There are seasons in life when God does not remove us from danger, but instead sharpens our vision. In those moments, nothing changes on the outside at first, yet everything changes within. You begin to notice things you once ignored. Conversations feel different. Relationships shift. Situations that once looked harmless reveal hidden intentions. This is not confusion. This is discernment. God is light, and light has only one function. It reveals. When God draws closer to your life, darkness does not disappear quietly. It reacts. It resists. It exposes itself. What you are seeing now is not an accident. Heaven has adjusted your spiritual eyesight. Some people think exposure means attack. They think if something painful is revealed, God has abandoned them. But the opposite is true. Exposure is protection. God exposes before He allows destruction. He reveals before He releases deliverance. He warns before He rescues. There are plans that were made against you in secret, words spoken when you are not present, motives hidden behind smiles. God has seen all of it. And now step by step He is pulling back the curtain. Not to make you afraid, but to make you free. Pay attention to the unease you feel. Pay attention when peace leaves a place it once stayed. Pay attention when your spirit resists what your mind tries to justify. The Holy Spirit often speaks softly, but His warnings are precise. You may wonder why God allows you to see these things instead of simply removing them. The answer is growth. Faith that has never been tested cannot be trusted. Vision that has never been sharpened cannot guide others. God is training you to walk wisely, not blindly. Do not rush to confront. Do not rush to accuse. Let God finish His work. When God exposes evil, He does not need your anger to complete the process. He needs your obedience. Silence, prayer, and patience are powerful weapons when God is handling the battle. Remember this, exposure is not the end of the story. It is the turning point. After exposure comes separation. After separation comes promotion. After promotion comes peace. What God reveals today, He removes tomorrow. What He uncovers now, He heals later. And what He protects you from quietly will one day make you thankful loudly. Stay prayerful, stay humble, stay alert. God is not shaking your life to harm you. He is shaking what does not belong, so only what He planted will remain. The light is on, heaven is watching, and God is leading you safely forward. Spiritual discernment is not something a person suddenly decides to have. It is something that develops when God draws a person closer to His presence. As the light of God increases in a believer's life, the ability to perceive truth also increases. Things that once felt normal begin to feel uneasy, not because the situation has changed, but because the spiritual atmosphere has shifted. This is the work of divine light operating within the human spirit, gently training the heart to recognize what aligns with God and what does not. Divine light does not shout. It illuminates quietly. Many expect discernment to arrive as a dramatic revelation, but most often it comes as an inner awareness, a hesitation that cannot be explained logically, a discomfort that appears without evidence. This sensitivity is not fear, and it is not imagination. It is the Spirit of God sharpening perception beyond natural reasoning. When light enters a room, darkness does not announce itself, it simply becomes visible. In the same way, when God's light increases in a person's life, hidden motives, unhealthy patterns, and false intentions become clearer. As discernment grows, relationships are often the first area affected. Words that once sounded sincere may begin to feel hollow. Promises may lose their weight. Actions that once seemed kind may reveal self-interest beneath the surface. This can feel unsettling, especially when these realizations involve people who have been close or familiar. Yet this discomfort is evidence of growth, not loss. Spiritual maturity often begins with the ability to see clearly, even when clarity is inconvenient. Increased discernment also changes how situations are interpreted. Problems are no longer viewed only through emotion or logic, but through spiritual insight. Instead of reacting quickly, there is an inward pause. Instead of panic, there is observation. Instead of rushing into decisions, there is prayerful restraint. This does not mean the person becomes passive. It means they become precise. Discernment teaches when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when silence carries more authority. Divine light also exposes internal attitudes. As much as it reveals external influences, it also brings attention to thoughts, habits, and reactions that do not align with God's character. Pride, impatience, resentment, and fear become more noticeable, not to condemn, but to refine. God's light is not harsh, it is corrective. It reveals weaknesses in order to strengthen the foundation. A person with growing discernment becomes more aware of their own heart and more dependent on God's guidance. This increased sensitivity is often misunderstood by others. Those without discernment may interpret caution as distance, wisdom as coldness, or restraint as weakness. Yet spiritual discernment is not about withdrawal, it is about alignment. It is the ability to remain present without being influenced, to stay loving without being manipulated, and to stay peaceful without ignoring truth. As divine light continues to increase, discernment becomes a steady guide, shaping choices, protecting purpose, and directing the heart toward what is genuine while quietly separating it from what is not. When God exposes something in a person's life, it is easy to assume that exposure is a form of judgment. Many people associate revelation with punishment, believing that if something hidden comes to light, it must mean God is displeased or withdrawing his favor. In reality, divine exposure is often one of the clearest signs of God's protection at work. God does not reveal in order to shame, he reveals in order to shield. What he allows to be seen is what he intends to prevent from causing deeper harm. Protection from God does not always look like removal. Sometimes it looks like awareness by exposing harmful influences, deceptive intentions, or unhealthy environments. God equips a person to make wiser choices. He interrupts patterns before they become traps and brings clarity before damage becomes irreversible. Exposure, in this sense, is an early warning system. It alerts the heart to danger long before consequences fully manifest, giving space for repentance, redirection, and rescue. When something hidden is revealed, it often creates emotional discomfort. Trust is shaken, expectations collapse, familiar structures feel unstable. This discomfort is not evidence that God has abandoned the situation. It is evidence that he is actively involved. Comfort can exist even in unsafe places, but protection sometimes requires disruption. God values long-term safety over temporary peace, and he is willing to disturb what feels secure if it is quietly destructive. Exposure also protects a person from misplaced loyalty. Many remain committed to relationships, habits, or systems, not because they are healthy, but because they are familiar. God's revelation breaks unhealthy attachment by revealing truth that can no longer be ignored. Once truth is seen, returning to blindness becomes difficult. This is not cruelty, it is mercy. God removes illusions so that trust can be placed where it belongs. There are moments when exposure feels public, even if it occurs internally. A person may suddenly see clearly what others continue to deny. This can feel isolating, as if understanding has created distance rather than unity. Yet this separation is often a form of divine protection. God does not allow everyone to remain close to a person he is refining. Exposure draws boundaries that words alone cannot create, shielding purpose from contamination. Exposure also guards against self-deception. It is possible to appear faithful outwardly while ignoring internal compromise. God's protection reaches into the hidden corners of the heart, revealing attitudes and motives that quietly erode spiritual strength. By exposing these areas, God invites correction before failure. He confronts gently, not to accuse, but to restore integrity. Protection through exposure requires humility. Resisting what God reveals only delays healing. Accepting exposure allows transformation to begin. What is acknowledged can be healed. What is revealed can be redeemed. God does not expose to abandon, He exposes to intervene. His light uncovers danger, not to frighten the heart, but to guide it safely forward, preserving faith, direction, and destiny through truth that liberates rather than wounds. When God reveals something, it is never an isolated act. Revelation is the first movement in a divine process that leads toward restoration and peace. What God uncovers, He does so with intention. And that intention is not to leave a person exposed or vulnerable. Revelation is followed by removal, not always immediately, but always purposefully. God does not show what is wrong without planning what comes next. Removal does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it happens quietly through changed desires, altered priorities, or a gradual distancing from what once held influence. What once demanded attention begins to lose its power. What once felt necessary starts to feel heavy. This shift is not accidental. It is God gently loosening attachments that no longer serve the future He is preparing. By removing what He has revealed, God makes room for peace to take root. Peace is not merely the absence of conflict. It is the presence of alignment. When something in a person's life is out of order, peace cannot fully remain. God's removal restores order by eliminating what disrupts spiritual balance. This may involve relationships that drain rather than nourish, habits that weaken rather than strengthen, or environments that confuse rather than clarify. God's aim is not loss, but harmony. The process of removal often tests trust. Seeing the problem is one thing, believing God will handle it is another. Many attempt to take control once revelation occurs, trying to force outcomes or accelerate separation. Yet God's removal is precise. He does not tear away recklessly. He removes in a way that protects the heart from bitterness and regret. Trust allows God to complete His work without human interference distorting the outcome. As removal unfolds, peace begins to emerge in subtle ways. Decisions become clearer. Anxiety lessens. The inner struggle to justify or tolerate what was revealed begins to fade. Even before external circumstances fully change, there is an internal settling. This peace is confirmation that God's hand is active. It is reassurance that obedience is leading in the right direction. God's removal also preserves dignity. Rather than humiliating or destroying, He separates with care. What is taken away does not leave emptiness, it leaves clarity. This clarity strengthens boundaries and sharpens purpose. A person begins to understand not only what was removed, but why it could not remain. This understanding prevents repetition and protects future choices. Peace, once established, becomes a safeguard. It alerts the heart when something threatens to re-enter that does not belong. Having experienced the calm that follows God's removal, the soul becomes less willing to compromise it. Peace becomes valuable, not fragile. It is guarded through discernment and maintained through continued alignment with God's direction. What God removes was never meant to define the future. Its exposure was the signal that its season had ended. Removal clears the path for growth that is unburdened by hidden resistance. Peace is not a reward earned through struggle. It is the natural result of walking in truth. As God reveals and removes, peace settles in, steady and sustaining, shaping a life that is lighter, freer, and guided by wisdom rather than confusion. Beloved, do not ignore what God is showing you in this season. Heaven does not reveal truth to confuse you, and God does not expose darkness to frighten you. He does it because He is leading you forward. What you can see now is what He is protecting you from later. Walk in faith, not fear. Stay sensitive, stay prayerful, stay obedient. God is ordering your steps, guarding your future, and preparing you for peace that cannot be shaken. Receive this word, hold it in your spirit, and move forward with confidence, because God is with you, and He never reveals without redeeming. If this message spoke to your heart, Subscribe now and stay connected for more life-changing words of faith and revelation.